Hi, I'm Katrina, and on my birthday, my billionaire stepson looked me dead in the face and hissed, "You're a parasite." He said it like I was dirt beneath his shoes, like the years I raised him, loved him, meant nothing. They planned a party to humiliate me, to erase my name from the legacy I helped build. But what they didn't know was that the lawyer sitting in the corner had my name on every page they tried to steal. And when he opened that folder, everything changed. Every year on my birthday, I'd wake up early, fix my hair, and whisper, "Still, I rise," just like Maya Angelou taught us. That morning, I did the same. The sun was spilling onto my porch like a warm blessing. Gospel played low on the kitchen radio. I had a peach cobbler baking my signature. The scent of cinnamon filled the house, the way it used to when this home still felt like mine. But even with the light, there was a shadow. I hadn't been Mama in a long while. Not really. These days, I was Miss Clyce, proper, polite, distant, like they were introducing a guest, not blood. Darnell, my stepson, my late husband's boy, he ran the family now, a billionaire, a brand. His voice had weight. Mine? More like background noise. I loved that boy, raised him like my own. But I'd learned to measure my words, walk on soft shoes around him and his wife, Tishona. I told myself it was just respect. But respect got heavy when you're the only one carrying it. Guests began arriving before noon. The driveway filled with foreign cars, shiny and spotless. I stood by the window watching them laugh as they stepped out, hair done, diamonds flashing. But no one looked up to the porch. Inside, Tishona was everywhere, hugging, greeting, adjusting flower arrangements I didn't approve, giving instructions like she owned the place, my home. She waved a hand, and the caterers moved. She clicked her heels, and the DJ switched the playlist. I walked to the dining room and froze. My name card was at the far end of the table, a clean little corner, away from the head. I Saturday took in the spread. Every dish was a version of mine, but newer, trendier, and named after someone else. The greens didn't even have smoked turkey, just kale and lime zest. Lime. I smiled anyway, clutched my napkin and told myself, it's still family. But inside, something was slipping. Like salt in warm water, you don't notice it leaving until there's nothing left. Darnell stood, raised his glass. Phones came out, everyone recording, like he was at a press conference. "We've come a long way," he said, all charm and camera ready. "Some folks helped us get here, and some folks just fed off our shine like parasites." He laughed. At first, it was awkward silence. Then Tishona giggled high and sharp, and that opened the floodgates. They all laughed. My laugh was quiet, the kind you fake to survive. I looked him straight in the eye, smiled like Mama taught me, and said, "God bless you, baby." My heart? It was screaming. But outside, I was marble, cold, still. I folded my hands in my lap while my niece, bless her, recorded the whole mess from across the room. eyes wide, phone low. Later that night, after the last glass was clinked and the cars rolled out, I sat alone in the den. The TV played something I wasn't watching. My phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw the video. There he was, my Darnell, toasting. Parasites. Laughter. Someone had added a title, When Your Stepmama Won't Leave. I didn't cry, not at first. I watched it again, then again. My fingers hovered over the reply button. I didn't type a word. Instead, I whispered, let the internet laugh. I still got the truth. I set the phone down, reached for a linen napkin, folded it like a leaf, smooth and neat, and placed it right in the center of the coffee table. That night, I opened an old drawer, the one I hadn't touched. Since my husband passed, inside was a folder labeled in his handwriting, Estate Zarina Holdings. The room was quiet, but my head was loud. I heard my own voice, calm and certain. When you've been quiet too long, silence becomes a weapon you know how to use. I didn't storm into anybody's room, didn't call a meeting. I just turned pages. Darnell could talk legacy all he wanted. But I still had the blueprint, and if they thought I was just some parasite, they forgot who planted the tree they're now eating from. By sunrise, I had already called the lawyer. I was up before the birds, couldn't sleep if I tried. My body was still, but my mind, it just kept replaying his voice. Parasite. Like it was a joke, like I hadn't raised that boy, fed him, prayed for him. I sat on the edge of my bed, held Andrew's old church handkerchief worn soft from decades in his suit pocket. I didn't cry. I prayed, not for revenge, just for clarity, just for my heart to stay steady. Outside, the birthday balloons had deflated, still tied to the railing like they were too ashamed to fly. As I passed through the dining room, I didn't touch a thing. The decorations, the dirty glasses, the cake with one slice gone, it all sat there, like a stage after the curtain falls. I whispered to no one. A woman can clean a whole house and still be treated like she never lived in it. I got dressed slowly. Not for them, for me. Picked out a navy blue blouse Andrew liked. Gold studs, clean flats. Dignity didn't need to shout it, just had to show up. I found the number in an old address book, still smudged from my husband's handwriting. Ainsley Monroe. I dialed. He picked up on the third ring, said nothing for a second, then softly, Katrina, I always knew you'd call when the silence hurt too much. By 10 o'clock, I was sitting across from him in his modest downtown office. The walls were lined with degrees, newspaper clippings, photos, with mayors, judges, civil rights marches. He hadn't changed much, still kept peppermints in the crystal bowl by the door. Coffee? He asked. And when I nodded, he poured 2 cups from a pot that had been sitting long enough to earn a sermon. He listened, didn't interrupt, not even once. I told him everything what Darnell said, the way they laughed, the video. When I finished, he leaned back and said, Did Andrew leave me anything more than this silence? His eyes softened, but his voice was clear. He left you truth, Katrina, buried under their greed. I reached into my purse and pulled out the old folder I found in Andrew's study. I hadn't dared open it before yesterday. Something about grief makes you avoid what you're not ready to know. We opened it together. Inside were marriage certificates, old receipts, handwritten notes from Andrew, little things like, Kay loves peach cobbler, remind chef. But then, near the bottom, one sealed envelope, yellowed, marked to Katrina, only if they come for you. My hand shook as I tore it open. It was Andrew's handwriting, clear as Sunday scripture. He talked about Darnell's ambition, how it could one day twist against me. He wrote about thresholds of disrespect and said if those were crossed, I had every right to contest the estate. He named Ainsley, gave him authority to act. The man across from me blinked hard. I never filed this, Ainsley said. He never told me it existed. We sat in silence, the kind that fills a room when ghosts walk through. Andrew had known. He'd known the boy he raised could become a man who forgot. Ainsley stood and walked to his filing cabinet, pulled out the original will. It had dust on it, years of sitting untouched. He flipped pages, then paused. His eyes narrowed. Here, he said. Clause 7, subsection B. He handed it to me. I read it once, then again. It gave me full controlling interest in Zerina Holdings, a property company. Andrew built in the event I remained legally married and lived in our home for 5 years after his death. I had. Darnell always assumed I'd move on, rent it out, fade into the background. But I hadn't. And now I was holding something they never thought I'd have. They thought they wrote you out, Ainsley said with a half smile. Turns out they just never read deep enough. I sat back, let the weight of it sink in. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. I looked at Ainsley, tears welling not from hurt, but from the quiet strength returning to me like an old friend. Thank you, I whispered. Outside, the city hummed like it always did. Cars passed, horns barked, life moved. But I moved different. I didn't call Darnell, didn't post, didn't text a soul. Silence was no longer my prison. It was my strategy. When I got home, I walked straight to the coffee table and took that same linen napkin, folded it tighter than before, and placed it down with care. That was my mark. My mind wasn't spinning now. It was clear. They thought I'd crumble, but they never saw me rebuild. I didn't have to say a word. Mr. Monroe had already made the first move. Morning light crept across the bookshelves, soft but exposing. I stood in the middle of my old study, wrapped in a silence too still to be peaceful. There was something about that day. I couldn't shake the feeling. It had been years since I'd felt this kind of stillness, since the morning we buried Andrew. But this wasn't grief humming through the floorboards. It was a warning. The air carried dust and the scent of aged leather from books long untouched. I noticed the linen napkin still folded on the desk, the one I shaped like a leaf the night before. I brushed a finger across it. They think the foundation is gone, I murmured. But they haven't seen all the stones I laid. I walked to the back corner of the room. The carpet curled slightly near the wall, right where I remembered. I rolled it back and dropped to my knees, my bones groaning, but I didn't care. There it was. The old floor safe Andrew installed after his first heart scare. He had told me, "This is for us, in case things ever get messy." Lord, did it get messy. My fingers found the familiar numbers, his mama's birthday. I dialed them in slow, 1 click, 2. The third gave way with a sigh, and the door creaked open. Inside, time waited. Neatly stacked papers, yellowed envelopes, the scent of metal and ink thick in the air. I reached in, pulled out the folder marked Estate Holdings Personal. It felt heavier than I remembered. I sat back on my heels and opened it. The first few documents were familiar old deeds, contracts we signed together, receipts. But then I saw a newer sheet, white, crisp, too clean. My name was missing from the top. I blinked. Read again. Zarina Kleiss removed as co-owner effective 3 years ago. There it was, bold, cold. A handwritten note trailed along the margin. Per request of Darnell Marvin, my own son. A chill crawled up my spine. I stared at that note like it might disappear, but it didn't. It stayed, staring back like it had nothing to be ashamed of. 3 years ago, that day, I was supposed to meet the accountant. Darnell said, "Mama, no need. It's routine, just business." I remember he brought me lunch that day, sat with me while I baked, smiled, like everything was fine. They had already cut me out. I pressed my lips together, forcing back the sting. Not one tear would fall for this. Not today. I heard Monroe's voice in my mind. Truth buried is still truth. I grabbed my phone, snapped photo after photo, every angle, every signature. If they wanted to play with paper, I'd show them I knew how to read between the lines. I placed the documents back exactly as they were and shut the safe with a solid click. No hesitation. I moved to the desk, sat down hard, and opened my laptop. My fingers moved on their own. Monroe, I need the file from that estate meeting 3 years ago, especially any communication with Darnell. I hit send, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. My pulse had slowed, but the anger simmered just beneath. Maya's words came to me then, clear as scripture. "You may shoot me with your words, but still, like dust, I'll rise." I folded the deed copy, tucked it into a manila envelope, and placed it in my briefcase. If Darnell wanted to remove my name from what I helped build, he'd soon learn I wasn't one to be raised. As I zipped the briefcase, my phone rang again. Unknown number. "This is Zarina," I answered. "Hello, Miss Kleiss, this is Jasmine. I work for Mr. Marvin. He asked to schedule an urgent meeting with you. He said it's time sensitive." She sounded rehearsed, polished. "He give a reason?" I asked. There was a pause. "No, ma'am. Just that it's important." I let that hang in the air for a good 5 seconds, then said, "Tell him I'll come, but on my own schedule." She stammered a quick, "Yes, ma'am," and hung up. I stood, grabbed the briefcase, and turned toward the hallway. As I passed the glass cabinet, my reflection stared back through a long crack running through the pane. The split ran straight through my face, but something about it made me feel more whole than I had in years. They tried to break me in the shadows, but I see them now. I stepped through the front door, holding the photo of the deed revision. The air inside seemed colder, less like home, more like a gallery with no life. Taishaha stood just inside the living room, her lips curled in a tight smile. She wore that dress I once bought, the one I picked carefully for an anniversary party. My own pattern, my own color. My heart skipped. She welcomed me with fluttering hands and that forced warmth. I paused, shock and indignation's twin flame lit in my chest. She never had permission, yet she parades in my name. I forced a polite hello, then retreated upstairs. No confrontation yet. Let that moment settle first. In the kitchen, I heard her lauding my vision. She told guests, "Mama always loved my style." She claimed credit for my recipes, even brown sugar peach crisp, a recipe she'd never touched until this moment. I leaned against the island, quiet, listening. She spoke loud, dished praise, name-dropped me in every sentence. Mother loves my outfit. Mother supports my brand. My fingers curled. I remembered the verse she liked quoting. "Let your yes be yes, and your no be no." Funny how she never lived by it. I inhaled, exhaled slow. I would respond, but on my terms. I stepped forward, not angry, but firm. That dress, that stage, that story, they aren't yours alone. The room shifted. All eyes turned. I opened my purse, drew out the original receipt and design sketch I kept hidden in my safe. Silence swallowed the chatter. Taishaha's face went pale. Guests murmured. I laid the papers on the table. "You could wear my dress," I said softly, "but you can't remove my soul from its story." The room cracked. Taishaha stammered. No defense, only stares. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I let the documents speak. I retreated to my bedroom, door closing behind me gently, heart pounding. But calmer now. In solitude, I felt strength ripple back. I opened my laptop and typed an email. Trace ownership of design rights. Seek all brand credit correspondence. Because yes, they copied. They tried the erase trick. But I know how to follow paper trails. I rehearsed how I'd respond if Darnell's assistant called. Calm, direct. No pleading. The leaf napkin folded, ironed, rested on the dresser by the mirror. It was still my symbol, my quiet echo. Late night, the doorbell rang. Startled, I crept to the door. Someone slid an envelope beneath no name. Read, in it before dawn. My pulse pounded. I didn't open it. I stood in the dark foyer, the envelope at my feet. Outside, car lights glowed in the driveway, then vanished. I whispered, "So they strike first. Fine, I'll strike smarter." The letter sat on my lap like a living thing, unopened. The lamplight flickered against its edges as I sat in the dim living room, too tired to cry, too steady to panic. My hands rested still, but inside, everything burned. I thought of Darnell's laughter, the kind that scraped at the edges of my patience, and Taishaha twirling in my dress, my color, my fabric, my story like she was the one who built it all. I reached for the envelope beside it, one of those birthday cards they'd given me. For charity, it read, all smiles and good intentions. Inside were several gift cards in my name, supposedly donated in my honor. No cause listed, no recipient, just a receipt of their generosity. And my name printed like a label for sale. I whispered to myself, is my name just a banner they wave when it benefits them? The silence gave me my answer. I set the letter aside. They called it giving back, but it was another theft dressed as kindness. That night, I called Brother Elijah from the church, a man of quiet grace, and one who still remembered the days when Andrew and I funded half the choir robes out of pocket. He sounded surprised to hear my voice. Elijah, I said softly, do you remember that charity event Darnell held last spring? The one they claimed used gift cards in my name? He hesitated. I do, Sister Zarina, but to tell you the truth, those cards never reached us. We never got a single transaction from that donation batch. My stomach turned. You're sure? I checked the records myself, he said. They're just sitting in some account somewhere unused. Darnell must have kept them for optics. I could hear the sadness in his tone, but I was done being sad. Thank you, Elijah. Keep that between us. I'll handle it from here. Before hanging up, I hit record on my phone. I needed the truth preserved, not twisted. One more thing, I said. Make sure the pastors know those cards were mine, not theirs to wave around. When I hung up, the quiet didn't sting anymore. It steadied me. I went to my office and pulled out the deed folder again. Every page I touched seemed to whisper instructions Andrew had left behind. He'd always said, if they ever move against you, the house will tell you how to fight. I found the clause buried deep in a contract. Written in his handwriting, the silent buyback authorization. I smiled. He'd known. I logged into my private laptop and pulled up a document labeled LLC Holdings Contingency Plan. I contacted Elandis Reynolds, a broker Andrew once trusted, and told him exactly what I needed. Start the purchases quietly, 1% at a time, spread across 3 shell companies. No trail back to me until I say so. He paused, then asked, You sure you want to do this, miss? Clyde, I've never been sure of anything, I said. Let them sleep thinking they own me. I'll wake them with a balance sheet. Before closing the call, I whispered into my journal, let them sleep on their gains, wake them to their losses. Then I folded my linen napkin, the leaf-shaped one, and slid it into my blazer pocket. My quiet armor. Downstairs, the sound of laughter floated from the kitchen. I followed it, silent, leaning against the doorway. Tishaha was setting the table for a so-called community gala. She told her guests, "Mother's going to lead this charity drive. It's her passion, you know." They nodded, smiling at her like she was some kind of saint. I looked closer and saw the centerpieces, my leaf motif, copied down to the stitch. My hands tightened at my sides, but I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She caught my eye for a moment, startled, but I only gave a small, polite smile and walked away. Every lie she spoke stitched my resolve tighter. Later that night, when the laughter faded and the lights dimmed, I sat before my computer again. The screen glowed blue against the dark. I refreshed my portfolio dashboard. There it was ZK Holdings LLC, small letters beside a single line of numbers, marking my first silent reclaim. Just a fraction of what they took, but enough to start a storm. My phone buzzed. A headline flashed across the screen. "Clyde's charity cards under fire. Is it real giving or family branding?" My lips parted into a slow, quiet smile. The story was unraveling on its own. I whispered, "Let them write lies. I'll own the truth." The house was still, but my pulse felt alive again. In that moment, I knew my rebellion had already begun. By dawn, I'd placed the next silent bid. I woke to a soft knock just before dawn. The air smelled of damp earth and lingering night. I rose, pulled my robe tight, and opened the door. Miss Vanetta stood trembling, a folded paper clutched in her hand. Her eyes were red. She looked older tonight, weighed down by what she'd held in silence. She stammered, voice low, "I've been pressured, threatened." She handed me the envelope. "I'm so sorry, but I remember your kindness. I was scared, but I can't stay quiet now." I closed the door behind her, guided her to a chair, pressed a glass of water into her hands. I held her hand and whispered, "Thank you. You did right." Her confession poured out. She'd been forced by Darnell's camp to sign papers that stripped me of ownership. Now, hidden in her bag, was a witness affidavit, neighbors, friends, all confirming how she'd been coerced, led to believe refusing would cause harm. She slid the document to me, hands shaking. I smoothed the paper. "Your truth is stronger than anyone's lies," I told her, quiet and firm. Guilt and gratitude tangled in the room. She asked me to use it only when I was ready, then slipped away. Later, my phone buzzed allay her calling. She returned to town. Her shift cut, rent lost. She had nowhere else. When she showed up at the door, I pulled her into my arms. No pride, no shame, just raw relief. She said, "I couldn't stand seeing you hurt from afar." She offered help, evenings of digging records, contacting old friends, gathering proof. I watched her, and in her eyes I saw the spark I'd felt many years ago. When I first stepped into this path, we sat at the kitchen table. The affidavit, the deed, the receipt files were spread before us. Over stale coffee, I explained the plan. She nodded, she believed. Together, we would reach out to the local paper, leak Vanetta's story, force eyes onto what Darnell hid. I called, "Mister?" Monroe laid out our urgency. I told Aleha, "This isn't vengeance. It's restoring what was taken. The papers, the truth, they have weight. I repeated in my head, still I rise. By evening, sunlight dimmed behind clouds. I checked my inbox. Subject line, the leaf remembered. A high-res image of my leaf pattern napkin, Tishaha holding it like a trophy. No words, just that image. I closed my eyes. My pulse quickened. She's using my symbol. They know I see. I whispered to the darkness. Now I act. I woke uneasy. My phone lit up with notifications, news outlets spinning Darnell's PR line, questions twisted in his favor. I slipped the leaf napkin from my journal to my palm. It reminded me who I was, what I had built, and what was at stake. I pulled on a plain black blazer, soft blouse, sensible heels, a neutral armor. My reflection nodded back, ready. By 10 a.m., I was walking into the community center. The foyer buzzed with chatter supporters, skeptics, cameras. I called Alaya and Mr. Monroe. Meet me at the hall in 1 hour, I said. Voices crackled in agreement. My heart pounded, but my resolve was firm. I will not let lies define what my life built. They had set up the charity launch gala in that same hall. Taishaha's jewel, complete with press passes and banners. I walked in, flanked by people who'd watched me fade and others who hoped I'd rise. Darnell was already on stage speaking about family support and honoring heritage. The crowd applauded. From the back, a man's voice cut through. If Mrs. Clyce's family, why was her name dropped from the deed? The room held its breath. Darnell's face flickered. Phones turned toward me. I stepped center stage, cleared my throat. Then came the live stream comment, bold and raw. Darnell, you removed her name years ago. The moderator's voice cracked. Is that true, Mr. Marvin? He faltered, laughed thin. He said she volunteered to step back. I raised my voice, calm but firm. Let me tell you exactly when, how, and why that removal was illegal. I held up Vanetta's affidavit. Pages trembled in my hand. Cameras zoomed. The audience stilled. He tried gaslighting. She agreed to it. I snapped back. You never asked me. You assumed. You never bothered to see me as partner, only as placeholder. Silence followed. Flashbulbs popped. Faces shifted, some in shock, some relieved. Later that day, I returned home. The air felt different, lighter, sharper. Mr. Monroe waited with a stack of documents. He laid them out, therapy notes, Andrew's private journal entries, words he spoke in session. How Darnell always pressured, insisted on erasing me. In another folder, a signed letter from Andrew requesting deed repairs, explicit instructions that should never have been ignored. I leaned back in my chair, letting each piece land. Memories of Andrew's soft voice drifted. They'll see me for what I truly meant. Now I understood. The legal files and therapy records were part of the same map. He foresaw this struggle, left me the tools to fight it. My breathing steadied. A quiet clarity settled. Not arrogance, but ownership. Headlines lit up that night. Clyde versus Marvin. Legal battle erupts. I sat in darkness, leaf napkin in hand, heart hammering. They tried to bury me. Now they push me into daylight. My phone buzzed. A message. Want to meet tomorrow, Darnell? I stared at the name, then typed, yes, on my terms. I arrived at the gala just as dusk settled over the hall. I wore the dress with the leaf motif subtly sewn into the hem, the symbol I'd reclaimed. The guests murmured as I entered. Some faces turned, some eyes widened. Taishaha greeted me, lips tight, eyes calculating. Microphones hovered near her. On stage, Darnell stood by the podium, rehearsing his lines about a legacy fund for Zarina. My heart kicked. Was he appropriating, paying, or both? I slipped backstage. Mr. Monroe nodded at me. I heard a voice. Will reading begins now. Mr. Monroe stood under the spotlight, clutching the original will. I stepped forward, light gathering around his presence. He opened it and began reading. Clause by clause, he named property, shares, all originally designated for me, Zarina Clyde in full if I remained married and residing on the estate. The hall fell into hush. Gasps cut through. Darnell's jaw tightened, lips thinned, pride faltered, cameras flashed. I inhaled deep, letting each word land like a hammer. He paused at the motive clause, my eyes closed briefly. I feared one day she would be erased by her own blood. When he spoke that line, I felt the chains snap. Every doubt, every worry I carried dissolved. Without warning, a staffer switched the big screen behind us. A whistleblower video played. Darnell was on camera, instructing Taishaha. Dress as me when she arrives. Wear her colors. Make people see she's fading. His tone was cold. The audience gasped. Taishaha's face drained of color. I felt shock twist into vindication. This wasn't just property. This was exposure. I whispered to the room. They used my image against me. The atmosphere shifted. Murmurs erupted. From the back, Reverend Biggs stepped forward, shaky but firm. He cleared his throat. He confessed that Darnell had pressured him with donations, demanded his silence. Tears fell. He said, I let fear silence my voice. Forgive me, Zarina. The crowd stirred. Some rose to applaud. I stepped into the aisle, voice steady. Thank you for facing your own shadow. The apology echoed in the room. Darnell stood frozen, his dominance cracked, his narrative undone. The gala ended, but not quietly. I touched the leaf motif on my dress as I walked forward. Cameras followed. I spoke. This is not revenge. It is reclaiming my legacy. Applause broke out. I lifted my chin, walked out with steady steps, into a future I'll build not on silence, but on justice. They thought they erased me. Instead, they recorded the proof. The morning air outside the courthouse was sharp, filled with voices and camera shutters clicking like clockwork. I stepped out of the car, back straight, palms dry. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just walked. Darnell was already there, flanked by his new lawyer, a man I'd never seen before. Young, aggressive in posture. They pushed for a temporary injunction, claiming the estate's execution needed more review. Mr. Monroe, calm as a winter lake, stood up, citing Georgia estate law precedents without a tremble. The judge leaned forward, peering over her glasses. Her voice was final. "The will stands as written." Gasps swept the room. Darnell's lawyer slumped back. Darnell didn't move. His eyes didn't blink. And me? I didn't exhale relief. I inhaled presence. I whispered under my breath. Justice has a tone. It doesn't yell. It confirms. As murmurs filled the space, a man stood up in the gallery. Older, dark suit, deep brown skin, shoulders square like he'd seen and survived more than most. "My name's Marvin Ellis. I was Andrew's business partner for over 20 years. Everyone turned. He stepped into the center aisle and handed the judge a thick, sealed envelope. 3 months before his passing, Andrew named Zerina as the sole executor of all charitable arms of our enterprises. He glanced toward Darnell. She was meant to carry the legacy forward, not have it hijacked. The envelope contained notarized documents. Legal, verified, irrefutable. Darnell, who had been lobbying to dissolve those community programs, now watched them be placed under my name. $6 million in investment back in my hands, not for me, for the neighborhoods, for the shelters, for the people forgotten in back rooms and broken promises. After court, while reporters shouted questions, Tai Shaha approached me outside, her face softer than I'd seen in years. She held out a small white envelope. "I was afraid," she said, "but I can't keep this anymore." I took it, no words exchanged, no forgiveness handed out freely. Later at home, I sat in my quiet kitchen and opened the envelope. Her handwriting neat but nervous. A full-page letter, apology, shame, fear. She admitted to mimicking my clothing, my speech, down to the way I folded my napkins. Darnell told her to do it. "Outshine her quietly," he said. There were photos, proof. My stomach flipped. My fingers trembled. But the most painful line read, "I thought if I became more like you, maybe he'd love me more." I sat in stillness, then whispered, "Sometimes truth hides in shame." I didn't tear the letter. I didn't throw it away. I folded it gently, placed it in my desk drawer. Not for revenge, for remembrance. The next day, headlines rolled in. Zerina Clyde's wins landmark case. News vans parked outside the community center. A local morning show interviewed me. I didn't wear makeup. I wore clarity. When they asked what justice felt like, I said, "It feels like breathing again." I didn't speak Darnell's name. I spoke about rebuilding, about scholarships, about legacy. Justice isn't revenge, I told them. It's remembering what love built. By noon, my inbox overflowed messages from women I'd never met. Some from churches, some from prison ministries. All said the same thing in their own way. "Thank you for showing we're not invisible." That evening, I walked out to the garden, The part Andrew always tended to, the bench under the magnolia tree, still stood firm. I sat, silence surrounding me like an old friend. The wind brushed the back of my neck. I closed my eyes. I kept my name, I said aloud, and I kept my soul. Tai Shaha moved to another state. Darnell left the country. The press lost interest in him. They moved on, but I didn't. I moved forward. A new plaque was placed at the front of the foundation building last week. It reads, Zarina's Vision. I didn't cry when they installed it. I just stood and nodded. There's no perfect ending, but there is peace, and there is proof. You are not what they tried to reduce you to. But as I looked into the garden again, something unexpected awaited me.